Let's move on to our next story. We are going to talk about the murder of Kaylor Ellingson. So you can be forgiven if you have not heard a lot about this case this week, because the media is purposefully downplaying it. So here are the facts. Shannon Brandt, 41 years old, was taken into custody on Sunday, the 18th, in McHenry, North Dakota, after reporting to the police that he had struck and killed 18-year-old Kaylor Ellingson with his car. Brandt, who police say was drunk at the time that he was apprehended, told investigators that the crash was the end result of a political argument between the two men, and he claimed that Ellingson was part of a quote-unquote Republican extremist group. After spending a few days in jail, Brandt is now out on bail. $50,000 was paid, and he is released after being charged with vehicular homicide. And this happened in North Dakota.
North Dakota.
So there's several layers to this, as always. The first, let's get it out of the way, because I think it's the most boring argument to make, because it's just the state of things by now. But if this were a young Democrat being murdered in a blue state, this would be all over the news, first of all. For weeks. Yes, for weeks. And secondly, the murderer would not be out on bail.
Right. Well, and I'm gonna add a thirdly on top of that. Every Republican, especially the Republicans from those states, would be called to the carpet about it, and they would have to make formal acknowledgments of it, and they would have to apologize for it, even though they had nothing to do with it. And we have seen none of that.
Yeah, which leads me into the second layer. This, if we're playing the political game, and I think we need to start doing that more often, because Republicans and right-wing persons are really bad at it. But if we were playing the political game the way it needs to be played, this should be tied directly to the rhetoric that has come out of the Biden administration in the preceding weeks.
It needs to be directly tied to that hateful speech that he gave, where he looked like a daggum Sith Lord with a bunch of stormtroopers behind him. That's what it needs to be tied to.
Yeah, the calling all the people who disagree with you MAGA Republicans, and claiming that they're trying to uproot your institutions and take over your country, it leads to stuff like this. Now, historically, we have tried to be the principled conservatives and not hold politicians accountable for the actions of their most deranged followers. They do not give you the same courtesy, and I would say that they are intending to stoke division, and even in some cases this sort of action. The people at the top are never going to hurt you directly, but the loons in their base are going to get the message, and they are going to do it. And then the reason Democrats don't do anything about it is because they don't care and they want it to continue.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that Maxine Waters speech, political rally that she did, where it was either shortly before or shortly after Sarah Sanders went to a restaurant and got run out by a bunch of hecklers. And Maxine Waters, there's a video of her going, "No, they shouldn't be able to eat in public. No, you should drag them out. No, they shouldn't be able." I'm like, y'all are calling Trump extreme? Right. And this is one of the leaders of the Democratic Party saying that I can't go to a restaurant and enjoy a nice meal because of my political beliefs. Who's the extreme one? And Trump is saying things like peacefully protest. Let's go down to the Capitol and peacefully protest. Everybody wants to point to January 6th, right? When people were doing directly opposite what Trump asked. Trump didn't, he never said anything about breaking into the Capitol. Not once. But yet Joe Biden can make the most divisive speech I've ever heard from a president, looking like a Sith Lord while he is at it, and a young Republican gets murdered and no one says it.
Right.
Silence.
So the message is clear, and we can, if we want to take the principled stance, we'll say that it's unintentional. But I'm at the point where I don't believe that anymore. The message is very clear.
Mm-hmm.
If you are of the wrong political party, you are not safe. The levers of justice do not work for you. In fact, they may actively work against you. And if you are the right political party, if you are the right mindset, then you get all of the protection. You get to enjoy the peace, unless Black Lives Matter is destroying your community. And if you're murdered wrongfully, it's going to be national news for months and months.
Yeah.
And you cannot have two standards of justice in this country. And there are currently two standards of justice. It will not always be that way.
No.
And when it stops being that way is going to be ugly, because it's going to stop being that way because the right becomes just as vicious.
Yeah, and that's not the side of the aisle you want to take off. I mean, when we've been talking about this in our personal lives, we can only bend so far, right? And get to a point where the bend becomes a break. And whenever things break, it's going to get real ugly, exceedingly ugly. And I know we think that I say hunting down of Republicans, because this poor boy, like the justification that his killer, I'm not even gonna name his name, the justification that his murderer gave was he was on the phone and I thought he was calling people to come get me. So now this is all it takes for you to be able to run me over. That's all it takes. I hold a phone up to my face and now you can run me over.
Right. And we talk about, and you're right, you don't want to piss off any side of the political aisle to the point where they break. But like, Republicans are not going to do anything about this. This is a Republican state.
Mm-hmm. And that's the next point I was going to make. Look at North Dakota. I mean, right. we're not talking Chicago. We're not talking Detroit. We're not talking San Diego, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. We're talking about a rural community in North Dakota. Very rural community, North Dakota, that went in 2016, they went 63% for Trump. In 2020, they went 65% for Trump.
Right. So
if it can happen in North Dakota, it can happen anywhere.
Right. And it may sound like we're contradicting ourselves, that the right is eventually going to snap, create a lot of problems. But Republicans aren't doing anything. The current Republicans are not doing anything.
That's right.
There is an environment being put in place right now where people that vote are going to get more and more erratic in their voting, and they are going to get more and more susceptible to some of the worst ideologues that you can imagine. Like, these people keep screaming about fascism, and a real fascist
look up how fascism came around. Yeah,
right.
Look
fascism
up
is
how
reactionary. Fascism is reactionary.
Always has been reactionary.
Yeah. And there is going to be a real tyrant that rises up in popularity in the future, and he's going to be nothing like what these people are complaining about now. He's going to be nothing like Donald Trump. He's going to be nothing like Ron DeSantis. And we are going to put him in power. I say we, meaning the country, are going to put him in power because the people that, the populace is to the point where the veil is, the mask is off. They know the Democrats actively hate them, but they're also starting to realize that the Republicans don't really care for them either. Republican establishment is nothing but controlled opposition.
It can get real ugly. When the current conservatives give up on the Republican Party, it will give rise to something that is nasty. This has got to be stopped. This has got to be controlled. The rhetoric has to be calmed down before irreparable damage is done. It's terrifying to think of. But this is the type of events that lead to a Hitlerian figure. People, they call us semi-fascist is what the Democrats like to call us. How long is it before people go, okay, if that's what you're going to call us, you're going to get what you ask for? And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. This needs to stop. I mean, the running down of an 18-year-old boy, young man, because you thought he was calling somebody and you thought it was okay because he's a Republican extremist. He says you're part of a Republican extremist group. That's the result of Democratic rhetoric saying that we are far-right extremists. And you keep calling Republicans, your average Republican, people, ultra MAGA, super duper, whatever you want to call us. Donald Trump was a down-the-line Republican when you look at his policies. There was nothing extreme about the man. He was down the line Republican. And when you make the general Republican or an extremist and you call them semi-fascist and you call them Hitler, well, it's okay to kill Hitler. I'm okay with killing Hitler. And that's the point that they're getting at. And the reaction to that is much worse. So stop. We don't need the reaction to that.
Well, it's not going to change until the Democrat establishment starts speaking out against this. The Republicans won't do it, and even when they do, nothing really gets done about it. Democrats actually know how to use power. But the kicker is they're not going to. The short-term gain for them is that their party is advanced. They can just not talk about this story and it'll blow over.
Short-time rewards are going to lead to bad long-term gains. That's the truth of it right there.
That's the political game. All right, let's get on to our next depressing topic.